should be played at high volume. This should be played at high volume. This should be played at high volume. Preferably in a residential area.
The following thoughts on Hoppe Hour do not represent Cox Media Group or its sponsoring. Anything you hear may and will be used against you. Thank you. Voted as best local podcast in Tampa Bay by the Creative Loafing. You're listening to Hoppe Hour.
What up? What's happening? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe. And on the phone line is a former NHL player who won 2 cups, one with the Avalanche and one here in Tampa Bay. Live on Hoppe Hour is former NHL player Chris Dingman. What's up, man?
Not too much. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I wanted to get you on my sports show a few years ago when I went to a radio school in Illinois, but we weren't able to get things going, so I'm real pumped to get you on, man, because I'm a big fan of how you break down hockey.
No, thanks. I appreciate that. You just had to move to Tampa, and then I'd come on with you.
That's basically how it went. How do you describe Tampa? Because when I moved here from Chicago, dude, it's the happiest thing I've ever done. How great is this area?
Well, everyone complains about the heat and the humidity, but I'll deal with 2 or 3 months of it being too hot and 8 months of freezing your butt off and shoveling snow. That's the last thing I ever want to do again. And growing up in Canada, we used to have to plug our cars in just so they'd start. So I don't miss those days whatsoever. So if I never shovel snow ever again in my life, it won't be too soon.
Dude, isn't it weird when you first come to Florida and you see the sunshine and you're like, oh, I'm never going to see snow again? Because for me, that was so surreal, just driving and you're like, why is the sun up, you know?
You can't beat the beaches, you can't beat the nice weather. And of course, beer is cheaper here too. So 12-pack here is what, $10.99. Up in Canada, it's like $27 or something. So I'd be sober. I definitely wouldn't be drinking at all if the cost of it up there, if I lived up there.
So besides drinking beer, what are some other things you have done during your retirement so far?
Well, I've done a little bit of morning radio, done some sports shows here and there, I've done some TV. I've been pretty active coaching youth hockey at Extra Ice for an organization called the Scorpion. So it's that's been pretty busy as of late doing that. I go to a couple shows here and there, but mostly it's just been coaching young kids, and it's good, but it's a bad thing too that my kids are already better skaters, better hockey players than I ever was. So I guess there's some hope for them.
Do you see this new trend where hockey is a growing sport? Because it sounds like the cream of the crop is beginning to rise in the sport. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think it's a global sport now. And, years ago, 10, 20, 30 years ago, it was mostly Canada and a little bit of Europe and some American players. And now you're seeing globalization of the sport and good young players coming out of Florida, coming out of the U.S., coming from all over the world. So I think it's great. And even, especially here in Tampa too, and in Florida, there's some great, good young hockey players. There's good programs going on, and it's good to see the games growing and young players picking it up. I think it's, I played every sport growing up. Played baseball, played rugby, played football, volleyball, but the shorts were too short, so I had to quit that sport. But I don't think there's a better sport as far as just learning how to work as a team and work hard, and I think it's just a great maturation for young kids, and I think it's terrific, and believe me, it's a good workout. We always used to joke around when we worked out in the summer. We get back on the ice for the first time, and everybody's huffing and puffing. We all joke around and say, "What do we bother working out for?" Because everyone thinks skating's so easy because you're on ice, but it's one of the hardest things you'll do outside of maybe cross country skiing or snowshoeing up a mountain.
What was the key to not burning out during a game? Because I feel like you guys don't get enough credit for how hard you work and how much you guys hustle during each and every second of a practice or a game or a scrimmage. So how do you guys not burn out?
Well, I think it's, a little bit of it's pacing yourself. See guys like Duncan Keith and guys like that play 30 minutes a night. They know you learn how to pace yourself and when to go and not go as hard. But, I think for the majority of guys, 95% of the guys, it's short shifts. And I tell young kids this all the time that, they'll complain when I change them after a minute or a minute and a half. And I always tell them if you're still fresh after a minute or a minute and a half, you're not skating hard enough. So the key to that sport is just it's all sprinting. So, the average shift in the NHL is 30 to 40 seconds. So just keeping your shift short and, not getting stuck out there too long, because if you get stuck out there over a minute, I used to have the saying where it looked like you're walking in fence posts because you couldn't bend your knees and your face is beat red and you're burning fire and your lungs are burning. So it's just keeping your shift short, and that's the biggest thing is not getting stuck out there, because you see that sometimes where a team can't get out of their own end and their defensemen are just got their hands on their knees and you can tell they're dying. So it's just keeping your shift short and making sure you don't get stuck out there.
Now, since you're a coach for the kids, you like to keep their shifts short as well. But what is some advice you give them? What are some of the things you tell these kids that are coming up in the sport?
Well, I always say who wants to play in the NHL, and everybody raises their hand. And odds of that obviously are pretty tough, but they just tell them to work hard. Same thing as any young hockey player, any American Hockey League player, NHL players. You listen and work hard. And the guys that listen and work hard, they're going to get farther than guys who don't. And, coaches, bosses, I'm sure you've encountered this. They're guys that are go-getters and are show up early, ready to go, and are eager. It's just working hard and listening and not messing up the drills. I think that's maybe one of my biggest pet peeves is you explain a drill, you show them how to do it, and then five guys turn one way and the other guy turns the other way. And you're like, what are you doing? Where did everybody else turn? Oh, the other way? Why'd you turn that way? And they're like, oh, I don't know. So, I think it's just kind of in life, just, making sure you're listening, have a good attitude, working hard.
Now, when these kids are acting up a bit or not listening, what is your key to getting their attention? Do you find yourself getting mad at them and maybe yelling at them?
Yeah, you got to yell once in a while, and I have two whistles. I have one I can do because I have fake teeth, and I got a whistle on my glove. But, I got a pretty good group for the most part. I don't have to yell too much, but every once in a while, you just bang your stick and yell. The old bag skate works here and there, and I actually just did that a little bit tonight at practice because they're messing around a little bit, so I just skated them and for about 5 minutes, and they got pretty tired, and it's not a lot of fun. So I just said, do you want to skate hard with pucks or without pucks? And they're like, with pucks. So usually they straighten it out after that.
How good can your kids get? Because you're a guy that played in the NHL, you're a coach, so you know talent. How good could they be?
Well, I think for any kid, the sky's the limit. And, my kids love the game and just love going to the rink and love playing and, love making plays and love hanging out with their buddies. I think that's a big thing is that, they really enjoy it. They have a passion for the game and, they just love doing it. And I think, when you love doing something and you're passionate about doing something, sky's the limit. Who knows how far they can go. Hopefully, my biggest hope, I guess, is, they get a scholarship so I can save some money on not having to pay for them to go to college. So, if they can go to college and get a scholarship and play hockey and do all that, I think it'd be great because I wouldn't recommend going and playing junior hockey like I did and riding the bus for 4 years. So it was fun riding the bus. So you kill a lot of time those hours riding on the prairies when it's 30, 40 below on the old iron lung watching a VHS back in the day.
Now, you just brought up the word passion and how your kids play with it. When was the moment during your life when you realized hockey was the sport for you and then you found your ultimate passion?
Well, I always loved it. Growing up in Canada, and, I played organized hockey, but we'd go outside and, go to the outdoor rinks when it was cold outside. And I just loved the game. And, you never really know. I was a big kid, and I played against kids that are a couple of years older. Just had a passion for the game and just love to compete, like play physical, like to score goals. And I think it was when I was playing baseball in the summer. And I've been playing for the same All-Star team for 4 years in a row, and I've had to clean up every year. And all of a sudden, I was going to miss like 4 or 5 days of practice, and I got cut. And that I guess every athlete, or I don't know, like you was talking, Michael Jordan got cut, and I wouldn't put myself in that. Obviously, I'm nowhere near the player he was, but getting cut from that baseball team, really lit a fire. And it was I had one of those moments where I love the game already. I was passionate about it, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to make it, and I'm going to stick it up this guy's, you know what, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure I'm not going to leave anything on the table, so to speak, and give myself every opportunity to make it. I got drafted to go play junior, and my second year, the scouting. They called the Central Scouting rankings were coming out, and I was ranked in the second round. And then you kind of go, okay, I might get drafted. And what does that mean if you get drafted? So, that was kind of, from there, and then getting drafted, really, those couple things, and you go, okay, maybe I can play in the NHL. And, it's just you're still a long ways away from realizing your dream and realizing your goal, but I think those couple things kind of fueled me to try and make a career and do the best I can and try and be an NHL player.
What was it like when you first got to play on the Calgary Flames? What was that first game like? How surreal was it?
It was pretty awesome. I think every guy, has that moment or where you kind of you look around and you kind of go, what the heck am I doing here? And I remember lining up against I think it was McCarty, Fedorov, and Steve Yzerman, and it was one of those things like, what the heck am I doing out here against these guys? So it was a dream come true. It's your foot in the door. You can get cut or you can get sent down at any time, but it was just pretty awesome, pretty surreal, and pretty tough to put into words. Just a lifelong dream, and something you dreamt about as a kid. That realization of that, and playing against your idols and guys you watched growing up, and now you're on the ice against them, and you take a little moment and you're kind of awestruck, and then after that, you got to buckle down and play. Otherwise, if you don't, you're not going to be in the league very long.
Now, you were in more than 100 fights. Were you always a person that was aggressive over your life, or was it just a case of it was the passion that you brought to the game? Like, how do these fights go down?
Well, it's a bit of both. I think I like playing physical. I was a big guy, and I could score goals when I was younger. Not so much in the NHL, but when I was younger, I was a big physical guy, and I'd go through you, over you, around you. It didn't matter. And back in those days, we started fighting when I was 15, and we still had cages on, but you drop your gloves and rip the guy's cage off, and it was one of those things where guys would test you if you're a big guy, and if you hit guys hard, and they come back at you, and it's one of those things where you got to stand up for yourself, and especially and then going into junior too, where you're a 16-year-old kid and you're playing against 18, 19, 20-year-old guys, and they're going to test you, and you get in your first fight and you do pretty good, and you get in your second one and you do pretty good, and then they expect you to keep doing it, which is, I guess, is a good thing and a bad thing. But I always like playing physical. I always like playing with an edge, and I had no problem fighting. Some nights you don't want to do it, but it came one of those things where you're sticking up for teammates and guys that are smaller, and you take pride in that. And when I was playing in the Western League, I kind of had a bit of both, where I scored a lot of goals and got a lot of points, but got in a lot of fights too. So it was pretty fun. We got in some pretty big dust ups and a couple brawls here and there that you can laugh about now, but looking back on it, you kind of think to yourself, I never want my kid doing that.
Now, how do these fights work? Does the NHL and do the coaches encourage it, or do they just kind of turn a blind eye and they know it brings entertainment? How do fights work in the NHL?
Well, I think now what you're seeing is they're trying to get away from it, and that guy that's just a fighter, so to speak. But kind of over the years, is that if you wanted to make it and maybe you weren't the most skilled guy, you had to find a way to do, or you had to do something else, and whether that be play physical or be good at killing penalties or face-offs or what have you, you just had to kind of find a role. And it's kind of in the days gone by where I had some coaches that would say, hey, listen, you got to go grab somebody, or sometimes they didn't even need to tell you. They just tell you to go line up, and you're lining up against a guy who was running around, and you kind of knew what your job was or what your role was, and if you didn't, you may not be on the team very much longer. So it's one of those things where some coaches will send you out. Other times, it's just in the heat of the moment. A guy hits you hit him, he gets mad, and then, it's like, F you or F you, and then, or one of those, or if you want to go, yeah, you want to go, and then away you go. So it's kind of usually how it works, where, it's kind of the honor system or the code, they call it, where, if you ask a guy to fight, or if a guy's running around and he's at the end of the shift, you ask him to go, he says no, and then you say, okay, next shift. So, there's a couple different ways that can happen. Heat of the moment, the coach will tell you, send you out, or just put you out against a guy, or you just sometimes you just had a bad night, or your wife was mad at you, or your kids didn't let you sleep, and you wanted to take some aggression out.
What was the key to being focused and to getting the job done during each game when maybe you weren't getting along with the wife, or your kids were annoying you, or you had things going on in your personal life? How would you turn it on during the game where you would just sort of ignore everything going on outside the ice?
Well, I think a couple of things. I don't think anybody really turns it on, so to speak, is that, when you leave the rink after practice, you go have lunch, and then you maybe go to a movie or do some run around, and you have dinner, and you make sure you get some rest and make sure you're prepared for the next day. So, there's a lot that goes into it. I remember a buddy said to me 15 years ago, how tough is it to play in the NHL? You only practice or play for a couple hours a day. And I kind of said to him, if it's that easy, how come you didn't make it, or so-and-so didn't make it, or so-and-so? And it's just one of those things where your mind, you're always thinking about the next game, the next day, and who you're going to line up against or what you need to do. So I wouldn't call it so much, turning it on, but it's a gradual process of building yourself up and, being ready to play, and, what guys will do. And visualization is a big thing where, okay, what do I need to do? If I'm a defenseman, I need to make sure I'm good defensively. I get it out, I get it in, I make that good first pass. And, as a forward for myself, I just, focus on what I needed to do and talk to my line mates and what we needed to do to be successful as a line and as myself individually. And, try and earn ourselves more ice time and maybe chip in with a goal here and there. So just, kind of going over who you're going to play against and what you need to do, and just, try and prepare yourself as best you can.
Now, going back to things you do in your free time, you guys get to go to basically every city in North America. So what were some of the best cities that you would go to where there was a ton of things to do before the game?
Well, like before the game, you're usually not doing too much. You go eat dinner, and maybe go to a movie or something, and pretty much take it easy. But a lot of times you're flying out after a game, and you're flying in, and you're flying out. But there's some good cities. Obviously, Los Angeles is a great city to go to. New York is, a pretty cool city just to walk around and go to some of the cool restaurants. And Madison Square Gardens is pretty neat. And obviously going back to Canada and playing in Montreal. Those old buildings and Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. And it's pretty special for Canadian guys to go back to Canada. And for myself, be able to play in Edmonton and go play where, I watched my idols growing up in Edmonton, Alberta, and watching the Oilers back in the 80s when they were at their best, when you had Messier, Gretzky, Anderson, and Coffey, and going down the line. So, there's some pretty neat cities, and, obviously going to those historic buildings, and, even Chicago. I remember my first year with Calgary, there was Theron Fleury, one of the veteran guys, our captain, to wait for warm up. And I said, "What are you talking about, man?" He's like, "Just wait for warm up." I'm like, "What? What do you mean? What are you talking about?" And he's like, "You'll see." You're standing in warm up, and then he's like, "Wait for the anthem." And then the anthem singer, it's pretty well known that in Chicago they start cheering quieter, and then they start getting louder and louder and louder, and you're sitting there. And, it's a pretty neat thing. So, a couple moments like that, some of the buildings, the atmosphere, and it's just pretty much every city is pretty special. And just to play in the NHL and be able to travel around, do what you love, and, go to some nice restaurants here and there, catch the odd concert. There was one time, and talking about fun things to do, there's one time we were in New York, and it just so happened that Billy Joel and Elton John were playing at Madison Square Gardens, and a friend of mine knew a guy, and I think we were like 12 rows back on the floor, and we got to see Elton John and Billy Joel in Madison Square Garden. So that was something I'll never forget, and was pretty cool.
Now, I'm not a guy that was ever coordinated or played sports, so I never knew the true feeling of winning a championship or winning a game. So what is it like to be a two-time Cup winner? How surreal was each time?
It's pretty awesome. It's pretty tough to put into words. When you have the lead, both times I had the lead, and you're just counting down, and that last minute seems like it takes forever. And once it's, the final buzzer goes off, obviously you celebrate, and then you kind of take a moment and you go, thank God that's over, because it's so grueling and it's such a long ordeal. But it's pretty awesome, to take the picture on the ice and be able to hoist the cup and skate around with it. And, it's pretty awesome. It's something you do with all these other guys, and no one guy can do it by himself. It takes a team, and you need everybody. And going back into, especially in Tampa, going back in the room after and having a couple of cold ones and spraying some beverages all over each other and all over the locker room was pretty special. And just realizing you accomplished your dream, and something that's so tough to do, and not a lot of guys can say they did it. So I think that's pretty surreal, pretty awesome. And then I think the day when you get the cup, and it took a moment at the end of the night, and I just sat there at my table and just looked at all the names of all the famous players that have won over the years, and you go back to 50s, 60s, and the 70s and 80s, and I'm looking at this thing and going, my name's going to be on there with Larry Robinson and Wayne Gretzky and Brian Trottier and Clark Gillies and going down the line with all these Hall of Famers. So it kind of teared me up a little bit, and I got a little choked up that you're on such a special thing with some of the best players to ever play the game. So it's something I never thought I'd do. Everybody dreams of it when you're a kid growing up. You're going to score the game-winning goal and you're going to win the Stanley Cup, but to be able to actually do it and celebrate it is something obviously I'll never forget, but pretty darn awesome.
Now, dude, for 102.5 The Bone, I'm in the promotions department. So at a lot of these Lightning games, we set up our tent and we get to hang out in Thunder Alley. And what I love about this fan base is it's so much fun, dude. There's no violence, and it's a really good family environment. So I want to ask you, is how great is this fan base here in the Bay Area?
Well, I think they're obviously awesome. Playoffs, we won our cup run, and, even the Lightning in the last couple of years where they've had success. That building is pretty electric, and we've got some good fans here and passionate fans, and, people really underestimate how well they know the game, how many people grew up. And, I have people that come up to me now that, say to me that, I was, 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 when you guys won the cup, and now I'm a season ticket holder. It's pretty special that you grow fans and people turned on to the game because when we won the cup, and now they're season ticket holders now and they're bringing their kids and stuff. So, we got great fans here, and obviously the weather is pretty good. Where you're up in Canada and everyone's sprinting to get inside and get out of the cold. Where here you can hang out, as mentioned, outside in Thunder Alley or on the party deck or hang outside in the warmth and not freeze your butt off and have some fun, listen to some live music and or DJ or whatever's playing out on the plaza.
How do you see this going down with them in the playoffs? Could they make another run to the finals? Could they lose in the first round? Because this has been an up and down season, Chris. How do you see this playing out for the team?
Well, it's obviously difficult with the injuries they have right now. Stallman, obviously Steven Stamkos being out, that those are some pretty key players. So it's going to be tough, but they have a good team, and that's why this is a team sport. And I always tell people, I go back to 2001 when I was playing for the Avalanche in the second round after Game 7, and Peter Forsberg, who was one of the best players in the world, was complaining of stomach pains after the game, and he ended up getting his spleen taken out, and we went on to win the cup, and everybody kind of stepped up and I guess won one for him or won it on his behalf. And so it's going to be difficult for this team, but they have a lot of talent. Go through the lineup, the roster, whatever you may call it. That they got some good players, and Ben Bishop, the season he's having, and goaltending's such a big part of it. That when your goaltender's giving up 2 goals a game, you got to score 2 to tie, 3 to win, and you got to like those odds. So matchups are a big part of it, but. I think this team's shown that, even last year there was all the talk of Stamkos not scoring for 5, 6, 7 games, and the team was still winning. So, this is ultimately a team sport, and, see how long or how quickly those guys can get back. But, everyone in that locker room's talking about, all right, let's win some games and, let's keep this thing going. So hopefully you can get the injured guys back. So, the sky's the limit for this team, obviously, with the goaltending and the talent they have. And, it's just a matter of playing their game and being consistent and not having the ups and downs, as you mentioned, as they had through the season. But, everybody has those. And, once you just got to get into the Stanley Cup championships. And once you're in the Stanley Cup playoffs, anything can happen. You've seen it over the years where top teams have been knocked off and there's, been comebacks. So you just want to be firing on all cylinders. So coming down towards the end of the season, you want to make sure as a team and as a player that you're playing consistent, you're playing your best hockey. And if you're doing that, you give yourself every opportunity to win.
Now, what are some teams that we need to look out for during the playoffs that could threaten this team from making it back to the finals?
Well, on the eastern side of things, Pittsburgh's pretty hot as of late. Obviously the Rangers have been there before. They got great goaltending, and there's a lot of good teams in the East. But I think Washington's, on everyone's radar. And the season they're having, the talent they have, and Hope's want to turn himself into one of the best goaltenders in the game. And you look at the talent they have with Ovechkin, Backstrom going down the line. I think that's a team that they're going to be tough to beat. So I think if you want to get out of the East, you're going to have to go through Washington at some point. So, it's going to be a team that's going to be tough.
Now, before I let you go, dude, who do you see going all the way this year, and who will lose in the finals?
put me on the spot. I think in the East, I think Anaheim, hopefully this is their year. They've been a good team for year after year, so I think it'll be them in the East. And I hate to say it, but I think Washington's going to edge out the Lightning. If Stamkos and Strawman don't make it back, if they make it back, I think the Lightning make it to the finals. I think the Lightning haven't been there before. They'll be the winners. If not, I think it'll be Washington winning over Anaheim.
Now, where can people find your work online, your analysis?
Pretty much Facebook, Twitter, at Dingish. Not doing a ton of that right now. I'm doing mostly coaching at Extra Ice and, doing lessons and running hockey camps and stuff like that. So at Dingish on Twitter, and then Facebook is just my name, I guess. I don't know if I'm verified or not, but that's the real me. It's a picture, I think, of my skull or the Stanley Cup or an empty champagne bottle or something like that.
Well, dude, I love when you were on 98.7 The Fan, and I've always looked up to how you were a no-nonsense type of player when you were in the NHL. So it's been a lot of fun having you on Hoppe Hour, and I would love to have you on again sometime.
Yeah, no problem, man. I appreciate it. My pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no problem, bud.
All right, bye.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour.